Now, let's talk about this. We have 6 regions that you would use, but it's not set up as a regional, it's rather an inter-regional primary system, correct?
No, absolutely. I think having a primary system that is based on regions that go first, then second, etc., has an immense problem with it, and that is it tilts the process toward one region 1 year and another region another year. And what we need is a system that doesn't have such both chaos as today and an immense tilt, which is also true today with Iowa and New Hampshire going first. To simply say to one region, you go first, continues the tilt, and we're not going to have a representative process. So what this does is to set up 6 regions, and one state or a group of states from each of the 6 regions would be in the structure, in the system.
So what I have here, and I'll look at this list that I have, region number 1 includes Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. That's one region, right?
Mm-hmm. It's New England plus down to New York, Pennsylvania, right.
Okay, and then we have the second region is Maryland, D.C., West Virginia, Missouri, Indiana, Kentucky, and Tennessee.
It's kind of a Mason-Dixon line.
Yeah, okay. Region 3, Ohio, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota.
Which have a lot in common in addition to all being in the Big Ten. But
that football and basketball part of the primaries is an important part of reform.
No, but I think there is a commonality in terms of the manufacturing base, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Region 4 would be Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska, Arizona, New Mexico.
Right.
Okay. And then Region 5 was Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, and Alabama.
Southern.
Yeah. And then finally we have Region 6, which is California, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Nevada, Utah, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Alaska, and Hawaii.
Now, the most important part of this would be that every 4 years, there would be a primary structure, and pulled into each of the primaries or caucuses would be a state or a group of states from each of these regions. So that's why it's not regional. We use the word interregional. It is a grouping so that every time there would be representation from various areas within this country.
So, for example, the potential schedule as laid out in the presentation, the second Tuesday in March, let us take a potential scenario, would include Connecticut, Rhode Island, West Virginia, Michigan, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Georgia, Idaho, Nevada, and Utah, crossing the regions, interregional on that particular date. And then this first Tuesday in April would be, say, New York, Kentucky, Ohio, Colorado, Mississippi, Alabama, Washington.
Any combination. As you can see, it's representative in the sense that it dips into different parts of this country each time. Mm-hmm. And that's what we want. I spent 20 years in Iowa. 20 years ago, I spent most weekends in Iowa, and it's a wonderful place, but it is far from representative of this country.
Same with New Hampshire, right?
Very much so. And I then went to New Hampshire. I was involved in Dick Gephardt's campaign, and I went to New Hampshire. New Hampshire there is no place that's typical. That's the problem. Mm-hmm. And so when you have them come up first with all this immense power, essentially what you're doing is unpowering, if I might say so, if there's such a word, other places.
Mm-hmm. I guess the one question too about this is how do you make this happen now? I mean, you're approaching it from the standpoint of doing something in Congress, presenting a bill, a modified plan as part of a bill. What are its options or its chances for passage, and what is a timeline? Because it seems this time there has been a lot of discussion about primary reform. There probably was last time around. I don't remember for sure, but it just seems to get shelved after the primaries are over.
How
do you push this?
Interject, though. There isn't much discussion of primary reform. I mean, I when I took out this material and then said the date, I had written an op-ed. It was 20 years ago that there was an op-ed on this proposal in the Washington Post. And it just struck me how little discussion there's been in 20 years. There's discussion about the horse race, et cetera, but there hasn't been a serious effort at reform. And what's happened is this system is now so botched, is so unrepresentative, is so helter-skelter, is so mixed up that now people are saying we can't keep going this way. And a number of people, including my brother, Senator Carl Levin, they've been working to try to get this system straightened out somehow by having, in our case, Michigan move up. Why should Iowa and New Hampshire dominate when Michigan, as an industrial state, represents so much of the challenge of America? And so I think what's happened is these other states have saying the same thing as Michigan did. Why should Iowa and New Hampshire dominate? So everybody's moved up their schedule. So we have not only a hodgepodge, we have stew.
So
I mean, it's a stew.
Sure.
I mean,
so what do you do now in the House, and what do you do to push this forward, and what kind of expectation do you have for this to actually happen?
I think this system is so out of kilter that we're going to face up as a country to how we do it better. We've got to find a new system. Someone said to me, well, whoever becomes president will oppose changes 4 years from next year. And, that tends to happen. The incumbent doesn't want a new system. And that's been okay because the system hasn't broken down completely. Essentially, you have a structure that is so broken down that the thing can't move anymore. I mean, it's like a car that's falling apart, and we're going to find that we're going to turn the engine, and nothing's going to happen. We're going to have to get a new vehicle.
So is that what do you think is because of the fact that news cycles have decreased because of the fact that we have so much immediate communication? I mean, is it because it used to be that the primaries were okay, they were somewhat important, but it was the convention that really made it happen, and then parties didn't want to have
happened though
for 35 years. But,
yeah.
But the point is that that's the way it used to be, and so sure we can deal with change, we can change things. The question in this case now is it's not up to a party to exercise control, but rather it's up to both parties, and it also involves the states.
Absolutely. I think, in a word, what's happened is that the public wants a nominating system that is dominated by the public. And we fought that battle 30 years ago in Michigan when I was state chair. And we came out with the conclusion, and it was controversial in 1971, that we had to have primaries and caucuses. We could not any longer have the selection done by a relatively few people at a national convention. And what's happened with you say communication and all that, the public wants to be involved. They want a structure that lets them be heard. The problem is the people who are being heard now are in two states which are unrepresentative, and when you add them together, the populations are less than the population of New York City and maybe even Los Angeles.